Maybe this one?
David, hi. You come in on the backstage.
You need to try it.
We need to
Maybe this one?
wire you.
But
That's cool.
This one is the same.
Okay.
Can you see me better?
Yes, much better. I can see you much better. Yeah.
This background is better? I choose a beach?
You are still black, Etel. The problem is the light behind you.
I will put a light. Yes, I know, but what I can do?
Yeah, that's good.
I
That's
change,
good.
Wait, I change to the other side.
Yes.
You don't need to see my face.
Of course, we need to see your face.
Yes,
Yes, perfect. This is good.
I don't have space for my feet, but it's okay. I am in the other side of the desk.
Okay.
Okay.
Check, check. Jocelyn, are you okay with the seating like this, or do you want?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, we still have one speaker.
Maybe I choose blue. Like
Welcome, everybody, to the panel of Riding the Green Wave, Accelerate Sustainable Transport. If you're using social media, the hashtag is MENA Climate Week. I will introduce myself. My name is Roslin Jabbour, and I will be your moderator for this session. Let me start by thanking the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for hosting the MENA Climate Week 2023. We are all gathered here from across the MENA region and from different disciplines in this incredible venue to drive the transformational change towards a greener future, a convergence of minds and expertise, all united by a shared commitment to address one of the most pressing global challenges of our time, climate change. Years have passed since the leaders of 196 nations signed the Paris Agreement and committed to limiting global heating to well below 2 degrees. Climate change affects every sector of society, and transport is no exception. This sector contributes to around 25% of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions. And after the COVID-19 pandemic, a huge
Et le transport,
the global logistics
c'est
and
pas
transportation industry,
très
causing
loin
supply
de
chains
lui.
to break down and some
Donc,
transport sector to
après
collapse.
Corona,
This fact underlines how
COVID-19,
crucial it is to balance the social,
ça changeait
economic,
beaucoup.
and environmental pillars
Beaucoup
of
de
sustainable
choses.
development to create a greener transportation network. Achieving net zero for the transport sector
C'est pour
will
le
surely not be straightforward,
transport
but it is absolutely vital
vert
if we are to reduce CO2 emissions.
pour
The big challenge, of course, but
il
also
semble
the biggest opportunity
zéro
for
de
potential
carbone.
reduction of greenhouse emissions.
Donc,
The MENA region has not taken this challenge lightly. Many countries in the region have started to embrace
Dans la
procurement, for example, a growing trend
MENA.
that encompasses various sustainable technologies and practices. But still, a lot needs to be done. Climate-smart transport policies,
La région
integrated planning and capacity building, investments in public transport infrastructure and services, enabling environment
région
for
est là
e-mobility
aussi.
solutions,
Il y a
mainstream resilience in infrastructure investments,
développement,
low asset life cycle,
il y
and
a
also activities encouraging
beaucoup
non-motorized transport
d'activités.
options. We heard during this week about many interesting initiatives in the transport industry, indicating that transformation is
On
underway.
attend
And at the heart of this change
beaucoup
is the focus on sustainability.
des solutions.
How? Different approaches. But one element
Nouveaux
can change
solutions
radically the game
pour,
is green procurement. Green procurement can be a powerful tool for
Notre
accelerating the
situation
climate change transport in the MENA region
dans
by
notre
aligning
société.
procurement practices with sustainability goals, incorporating
Donc,
sustainability criteria, promoting renewable energy sources, fostering innovation, among many
La
others.
source,
In this
la
transformation,
nouvelle
the role of
source
the private sector is critical
d'énergie
to bridge the financing gap,
et le
provide
transport.
latest technologies, and bring innovative approaches for a low-carbon and resilient future. Here today, we will delve into
Donc,
the intricate web of sustainable
on discute
transportation
des solutions
in the MENA region, examining the critical role it plays in our
résultats,
collective journey towards a more sustainable
de nouveaux
and eco-friendly
résultats
future. Our distinguished panel will exchange about
pour
the
nouveau
power of
énergie.
collaboration and partnerships between the public and private sectors, the importance
Donc,
of the
on
policies
va
and
discuter
regulations,
ensemble
the need for
avec
innovation and technology, the opportunities for
vos-
funding and investment, the crucial role of the public
et c'est quoi les
awareness and
chances
engagement, and in parallel, the unique challenges that the MENA region faces, so to make
Et c'est
sustainable
quoi
transportation a reality.
les problèmes.
Our panel represents diverse sectors and perspectives. They will share their insights,
Il y a beaucoup
experiences,
de
and
discussions là.
solutions that promise to spark transformative change in the transport sector. So without
Et
further
on va
ado,
voir
let me introduce the panel and start
de
this
lui
lively conversation. We have
On va
connected
voir
with us virtually
de
Mr.
solutions.
Brahim Dajani, Practice Manager for the Transport at the
Monsieur
World Bank,
Brahim
Mr.
Dajani,
El Berazlowski,
pour la
also
Banque
connected with us
nationale,
virtually. Unfortunately, they couldn't be able with they
Madame
are not able to be with us
Pelaski,
physically here. Practice
mais
Manager also
ils
for
n'ont pas
procurement in
arrivé
MENA
là.
at the World Bank. Mr. David Ramos, Head of
Ne peut,
Sustainability for HSBC
ne
Bank
peut
at the Middle East and North Africa
vient
and Turkey. Mr.
avec
Eli
nous.
Hello, Transport Procurement Engineer. Mr. Jean-Louis Morcos, Senior Investment Officer Infrastructure
Monsieur
and Regional Sustainable Finance Lead
Jean-Louis
at
Morcos
International Finance Corporation,
de
IFC,
la
and Mr. Walid Jhoubi, Senior Procurement
Banque
Specialist
nationale
at the
aussi.
World Bank. I will open the session with Mr. Brahim Dajani. Mr. Dajani, I know you couldn't
Je
be here in
parle
person,
avec
but we would love
Monsieur
to hear from you on the
Dajani.
transport sector.
Je
in
pense
this,
que vous
very
ne
interesting
pouvez
session.
pas
I'll give you the
bien.
floor.
Je voudrais des questions,
Thank you, Joe.
de poser des questions
And,
pour vous.
it's really a
Qu'est-ce que,
great pleasure to be here
qu'est-ce que
today,
votre opinion
together with the distinguished
de,
panel, at very
à la
important
neuve
topic,
énergie?
in a very important,
Je suis
transition
trop
time.
content
If I may,
que je parle
with-
avec vous
with the intro that you have
de ce
made, just,
transfert
delve a little bit
très
more,
dangereux.
On setting the stage towards sustainable transport.
Je
and
vais
emissions.
parler
And I want to go back a couple of years
à la
when
mina.
we at MENA transport we established a regional
Il y a
transport
2 ans,
strategy. And what drove us on a number of
on
paths here that MENA is highly urbanized
cherchait
region
et discutait
with cities having the highest
des
intensity travel demand
solutions.
that are responsible for
Le
large
carbone,
share of GHG emissions. When
le
compared
problème
to other
du carbone.
cities,
Donc,
around the world, MENA cities host 62% of
quand
the population, while others host 55%.
on voit ça, il y a 66
The cities are responsible for 60% of GHG emissions.
pourcents
5 of the MENA regions are among the top
et
10
60
per capita GHG
pourcents
emissions globally.
les
You
pays,
are in Riyadh today.
ils ont
Riyadh and Al Jubail of Saudi Arabia
et
are
semblent.
fourth and fifth as the most
Donc,
polluted cities on earth due to their high
c'est
industrial activity.
c'est eux qui sont responsables des sembles.
Back in 2016.
Donc,
I'm confident that the situation has improved much more since then with the important policies
je suis
and regulations and measures that have been taken over the past few years. In a nutshell, there is a need for smart cities, urban planning, transit-oriented development, and improved municipal services efficiency. To this effect, the transport sector consumes a significant amount of energy and is a major source of CO2 and air pollution in MENA. Just like you have highlighted, the transport sector causes about 25% of the total energy-related CO2 emissions in the MENA regions compared to the global of only 21. Again, these are the numbers of 2018 as we don't have a more recent one. And the transport sector share is about 25%. Like I said, while air pollution has been
Dans le domaine du
seriously impacting the capital, where it's killing about close to 300,000 people annually.
cette population
And that dates back to 2019.
qui tue
And I'm sure the situation has not really
1100 personnes annuelles,
All 19 countries
c'est
in
selon
MENA
le
region
sondage de
are
2018.
2.5 air pollution. And 100%
Il y a
of their
18
population
pays qui ont commencé à prendre le procédure.
guideline gravity, the highest regional average in the world. As you can see, these numbers are quite
Comme on voit,
compared
cette statistique qui est très importante rapporte le Moyen-Orient par rapport au monde entier dans les pays du Moyen-Orient.
Main targets in the different national strategies focus on public transport vehicle standards.
Le but principal de concentrer sur le transport économique
And leveraging technologies, which is one of the topics that
et
we discussed
l'opération de
today,
recyclage
supporting transitions and driving
sur
sustainable
l'énergie renouvelable
through green transport. Sorry, through green procurement.
rapporte
Green procurement will entail transport
le
technologies,
transport vert.
including innovative
Et
vehicles,
c'est
emerging
un vert
technologies,
qui est
energy efficient solutions,
beau
electrification,
supporter
support green energy
toujours
transition through
toutes sortes
alternative fuels such as biofuels,
d'énergie,
hydrogen,
énergie
or
verte
transition to renewable energy.
et
Similarly, blockchain
l'essence
technology
biologique
will be
et les différents
important
types
element
d'énergie.
of decarbonizing transport.
Toutes
Again,
ces
green
énergies
procurement will
remplaçables
be basically the pillar of
pour
achieving
avoir
these important shifts towards
pour
sustainability.
être le
With
colonne
that, I pass it
principale
back to you,
pour
Jocelyn,
faire
and I look forward to
pour faire le changement.
MENA's views and
On va
the
laisser
exchange of
le
further
parole,
ideas.
le
Thank you very
main
much.
Thank you,
pour
Mr.
les
Dajani. For this
participants.
very informative and
Merci,
insightful
Monsieur Janet,
introduction and giving
pour
us
cette
a background
présentation,
on the transport sector in the
pour
MENA
ce
region. I will
backstage
come
que
to
vous
the
avez nous
procurement
donné
element
sur
in the
le domaine
discussion.
énergie.
So it's undeniable that procurement plays a
Les
pivotal role
personnes qui vont
in
nier
sustaining any sector. And in our daily
que les
lives, we
vendeurs
engage in procurement
prennent une
activities,
place
could be
très
on a smaller
importante
scale,
dans notre
when
vie
making choices such as selecting
et
the milk to purchase, the
qui
type
vont
of
avoir,
bread
qui
to
vont prendre des
consume,
décisions
or
pour
even when
acheter
deciding on a
et dans
significant
le
investment like a car or a house.
diversion
The
d'acheter
significance of
le repas.
procurement becomes more pronounced, structured, and subject
L'importance
to rigorous regulations
de ce
when it
domaine.
comes to development of public infrastructure, such as constructing roads
Quand on
or
parle de
airports,
développement,
or when
le
facilitating transportation of
soustracteur
goods. So
et les
with this, I will
facilités
give
de
the floor to Ms.
transport,
Etel Beraslawski, World Bank
de,
Procurement Manager
de
for the Middle
trading.
East and North Africa, to give us a little bit of her insights on this
J'invite Madame,
Ms.
Monsieur,
Beraslawski, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jocelyn,
le
and good
recteur
morning,
de
speakers and
l'ADV dans le
Ibrahim and
Moyen-Orient.
participants. It's my great pleasure to be here virtually. I wish I would be
Je
with
suis
you
très
there. I
heureuse
mean, you, Jocelyn and
d'être
Ibrahim
avec
already
vous
said
sur
all, so
Skype,
I have, in fact, little
sur
to add
l'Internet.
to all the good references and thoughts and views that you brought to the table, including setting
Merci à
the
Gisli
scenario of
qui
where
nous a
we
donné
are
beaucoup
in the
de
transport
compléments.
sector and the importance of procurement.
Ce
But
qui
I think
concerne
that this is a
la mise en
crucial topic.
place
I
de
am glad that this
stratégies
topic, green
dans
procurement and transport,
le domaine de
has
transport
been included
et la
in
question
this
des
MENA
acheteurs dans le
dialogue.
domaine de
So,
transport.
as already mentioned by Ibrahim and by Jocelyn,
Sur le
transport
sommet, on va y avoir le grand sommet cette semaine dans le
and
sud-est.
the third is procurement.
Alors, il y a
Procurement,
beaucoup de populations qui vont
the
affecter notre
emissions, about
repas et notre
18% of the
alimentation
global emissions
quotidien.
in the world. So in one way or another,
Et,
procurement and transport
et
are
de
the main
manière
actors
tant
in
mieux
total
que mal,
polluting the environment and
les,
increasing the environmental footprint. So I
le
think
pouvoir
today's
d'achat
aims are sharing ideas,
est un
experiences,
principal
exploring
point
ways to collaborate together
sur l'histoire
because this
de
is about
population.
many parties. It's not about procurement, it's not about transport, it's about
C'est
academia, it's about private
pas,
sector, it's about public sector. We all
c'est
need
pas
to
le
work
secteur
together
privé ni
to
le
make this
secteur
happen,
public,
to
mais
bring
ni
a dream,
l'académique.
to implement
Mais dans
vision
ce
in transport.
monde, toutes sortes de choses vont arriver.
And as I
Il faut
mentioned,
qu'on arrive à trouver une
transport consumes
solution
a lot of
permanente
energy, pollutes substantially. So we
pour
really need to
consommer
work on that sector to find ways
le
to
moindre
reduce the
consommation
environmental footprint.
d'énergie pour
As
affecter
mentioned also,
des
many countries have taken a lot of
populations très
measures to
graves
reduce
sur
the
notre
impact of the
santé,
transport, of the private transport. We saw in
dans
Europe or in
surtout
many
dans
other
le domaine
countries
de
public
transport.
bus transit, transport that is more
On a
efficient,
regardé
more not more
d'autres
efficient, also better
dans d'autres
designed
pays qu'ils ont
for the
bien
passengers. We also see cycling. We also see a lot of
structuré
measures being implemented to reduce
le
the use of
soustracteur.
private cars, which are the drivers for the contamination.
On a
But
un
MENA
niveau
is
bien
included. I am
d'opération de
watching. I want to
recyclage
see these things
qui a
happen as
développé le
fortunately is
travail.
so I think we have a lot of to do, but also to bring politicians, to
Mais
bring the policy
nous avons encore
more
plein de
that this
choses
has to be in the agenda.
à faire.
In that respect, as I mentioned yesterday in MENA, just a few
Comme nous
countries
avons dit
include
hier,
some sustainable
quelques
procurement in the
pays,
procurement laws. When you include in the procurement
ils ont
laws, you have the
commencé
way, you have the space
l'opération de
to
transfert
implement in some way or
sur
another this
l'énergie
procurement
permanente.
throughout the bidding processes.
Ils
But
ont
there are a few
bien
countries that
développé et amélioré
have
plein
done so
de
after
domaines
our
comme le
extension.
domaine de
So these
transport.
countries are Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, Saudi Arabia,
Ce
Tunisia,
pays-là,
West Bank and Gaza. These
comme
countries
le
have some,
Jordan
in
et
some way
le
or another,
Bénin et le
consider
Maroc,
sustainable
ils ont
procurement. But
commencé
just in
d'une
the main
manière ou d'une
framework,
autre
in the main law, not
à
in
faire le
regulation,
paiement
not materializing
et
in bidding
acheter.
documents on how to implement this green procurement in practice. And this is the
Il
big
faut
challenge.
mettre
The big challenge
tout
is
sur
in
la
the
table
practitioners on
pour
how to
lutter
translate the willing
contre.
of
On
implementing
essaie de
this
trouver
procurement when
des
they think
rechercheurs
they
et des
are not
influenceurs.
equipped to do so. But also in the market, we need to see whether the market is ready to
Et,
provide that
et
kind of
c'est une question
technology.
sur
So
le
capacity
marché.
building, as
Est-ce
mentioned,
que le
is
marché est
crucial
prêt
to really bring awareness on that, but also
pour
to provide
construire
examples,
la
to provide
capacité?
lessons learned on this all over the world, so we can move this
Le cours que nous
forward.
avons
In
appris
this
est
sense,
bien
as I
meilleur
mentioned
que
also yesterday in
le
the session that
pratique
we have on
que
green procurement,
nous
the World
voyons
Bank
sur
is
le terrain.
taking this issue very seriously
On a
and
vu le Banque
straightforwardly.
centrale,
So we
le
have
Banque
made
internationale
mandatory the use of
qui
rating
pour prendre ça,
criteria in all large contracts
tenir ça
for
en compte
goods,
de
for
manière
work,
très
or for
sérieuse
consulting
et
services.
sévère.
What does it mean? That we will not allow anymore to
Ça veut dire
award the contract to the lowest
que
price bid. There
nous
will
allons pas
also be a
retirer
balance
et
between the
on
quality
va pas
and the
tenir de
price. So
contrat
under the
pour avoir
quality,
juste
we
le
can
prix,
include
mais
some
on va regarder
criteria
la
to assess
qualité et le
whether
prix.
the contractor, the
Et il y a
supplier, the contractor, for
des
example,
standards
has
qu'on va
proposed a
voir
methodology to implement the
pour
work
tenir
contract
tous ces
in a less
contrats.
impactful way to the
Bon,
environment.
les
Whether the supplier
technologies
can also
et
provide
comment
some
les sociétés
innovations,
prennent en
different kind of
compte les
batteries, different kind
problèmes
of
de
use of
population
energy when they produce the goods. So this rating criteria
et
give us
l'utilisation
the
de
opportunity
l'énergie,
to
tous ces standards
really motivate the
qu'on
market
va
to
appuyer
try to
sur
innovate
pour
and to
faire
help in this agenda of
notre
green
contrat
procurement.
dans
But
l'avenir.
again, we need to provide the market with also the
Il
elements.
faut
We need to provide
qu'on
subsidies, we need to
avance
create this
le
industry that
marché
sometimes does not exist.
pour
And of course,
fournir des
capacity building, as I
productions
mentioned. And so this will be
pour que
one
le
of the areas that I think we
marché
need
puisse
to work together.
continuer.
So I think this event will bring,
On a
I hope
besoin
so, with the
de
lessons learned,
travailler.
with the experience of all these speakers, awareness of the importance
J'espère
of
qu'on
green
apprend
procurement
plein de
and
questions,
transport,
plein
which
de
is a
choses
crucial sector. So I am
à
very
partir
happy
de
of this
ces
partnership with the transport
réunions.
sector and with all of you. And I'm looking
Je suis
forward
très
to really
heureuse
tangible results in the
de
way forward.
présenter
So
aujourd'hui
thank you
et
very
être
much for the
présente
opportunity to provide the opening
et
remarks,
parler
and I
de
hope we have a
ce
very
point
good
très
discussion today.
important.
And thank you for moderating the event, Jocelyn.
Et merci
Thank you,
d'avoir la
Mr.
chance de parler
Laslowski.
avec vous
Actually,
aujourd'hui.
hopefully next time we will have you and Mr. Dajani
La
physically
prochaine
here with us.
fois,
Actually, your
vous
introduction
allez
sets
être
the
avec
floor
nous.
to understand better the green
La
procurement. And it
présentation,
opens the discussion with Mr. Walid Houibi,
la
the senior procurement specialist at
présentatrice,
the
c'est
World Bank. So we would like
d'expliquer
to hear
sur
from you a little bit
l'énergie
about green
verte
procurement. What
avec
is
Monsieur Walid,
green procurement? What does
sur
it mean? And why
les
is it
achats verts
important
et
for
qu'est-ce que ça veut
sustainable
dire les achats
transportation?
verts
In what ways can
et
the
son
implementation of green
importance
procurement
dans
practices be leveraged
pour
to effectively address and
pour le
alleviate
transfert
the
vers le
environment
transfert
impacts
permanent.
stemming from transportation systems? Maybe you can share examples of some initiatives where transportation material, for example, and
On va y
resources
avoir
were
plusieurs
used,
initiatives.
recycled in a way that minimizes environmental impact and
On
supports a circular
peut
approach.
refaire plein de
Mr.
questions et
Thank you,
on en
Jocelyn.
parle pour
I'm
l'éclaircir.
very glad
Merci,
to be here
Jacqueline.
today on your
Je suis très
panel
heureux
about this
d'être là aujourd'hui
exciting topic among
pour
these
parler de
esteemed
ce sujet-là
panelists. It's difficult to intervene after Ibrahim and
avec
Ethan, but I'll try myself
l'expert
my best
qui sont
to
avec nous.
answer your question. So
D'après ce qu'ils
we
ont
all
dit,
agree
mes
that
camarades, on va dire qu'on est
sector
tous
is
d'accord
among
sur
maybe the first
le
sectors
transport
that emit
et le
CO2
domaine de transport.
at the global
Ce
level.
sera le premier
And
secteur
procurement also.
qui a
Public
besoin
procurement is really one of
d'être
the
bien
sectors
informé.
that contribute to this.
Et les domaines des achats
Public procurement,
qui sont assez
governments in the
concernés,
world almost
qui travaillent,
they have something like 11 trillion US dollars per year spent through public procurement
qui travaillent
to buy transport
sur un budget de 11
means,
millions
to build
annuels pour acheter
infrastructure. So public
les
procurement
matières
also
de
is
transport et
contributing to
les
these emissions
sous-tracteurs
of 15% of maybe the
et l'achat
global,
gouvernemental
greenhouse
qui
gas
vont
in
aider
the-
aussi
in the
à
globe.
faire toutes ces sortes
Transport
de
sector
pollution
is the second sector
et
among
réchauffement
6
climatique.
sectors that were shared
Et
in
parmi
2002
les
in a
6
study by
secteurs en 2002, qui a
Global
été
Economic
mentionné
Forum
lors d'une
that shows
étude
that transport contributes by
dans
almost
une
1
réunion
gigaton of
économique
CO2
que le
equivalent
transport
emitted in the globe. So,
utilise
if the government
one
do
tonne.
some initiatives to really make the transport sector more green,
Alors,
it will absolutely
alors
contribute
le
to the efforts,
gouvernement
of the government to
essaie de
governments
rendre
to reach the
le
net zero or
secteur
to
de
reduce at
transport
least the emissions.
bleu
So the way to do it
zéro
through green,
d'émissions
through
de
public procurement
carbone
actually to implement
pour faire
sustainable
cela.
and green procurement practices. So sustainable procurement is about considering social, environmental, and economic
Et le penser,
dimensions as part of the way the
le
governments
penser dans
procure
tous les
their needs.
secteurs
Green
économiques,
is focusing on
économiques
green procurement
et comment
and
on
on
peut concentrer
products
sur
and inputs that
l'énergie
reduce
verte,
the impact on
sur
on
le
the environment.
matériel qui vont
And this
diminuer,
is a
diminuer
good entry point to
l'effet sur le
contribute to reducing
climat et les
emissions
météos.
through or within the
Et c'est
transport
une
sector
question
through procuring
très importante aujourd'hui.
More efficient
Par rapport aux
means
achats,
and
il y a
infrastructure through
des
including
matières
several concepts of green in
plus
procurement.
effectives que d'autres
So this
pour
can be
employer
done
bien
through
les
making,
matières
or
vertes dans tous
focusing on
notre achat.
more sustainable inputs rather than cost, as said by
En
ETEC.
concentrant
So
sur
now there are
sur les
several
produits
approaches to do it,
de qualité qui
through, for example, the
vont
rate criteria,
servir.
as mentioned by ETEL, where the
Dans la vie,
organizations or governments
il y a des
don't only
standards.
focus on price, but on procuring more sustainable
Il faut pas
inputs
concentrer
to
sur
the
le prix
transport sector,
seulement, mais
rather than looking at the price.
mais
And
sur
this is,
mais sur le
and
qualité
the way to do it is to focus on the
et leur
life
effet sur
cycle
la
cost of the
pollution
product
ou sur
instead
le
of
météo.
just looking at the purchasing price. So it's the purchasing price, it's the operating cost, and the end-of-life cost.
La vie de la
Some examples
de la
the
matière
transport sector, as mentioned by Ibrahim,
compte
now the
sur la
electric vehicles
qualité tout
are
d'abord.
coming and they are contributing to
On va parler de
reducing the impact of
la véhicule électronique
greenhouse
qui
effect in the
qui
sector.
va servir
More green
à diminuer le réchauffement
infrastructure
climatique
where, for example, as you mentioned, the building
et de
waste
reconstruire le
can be
sous-secteur
recycled in
vital
building
et
roads.
vert.
There are some initiatives. Yesterday, we
Et
had a
pour
speaker from Tunisia who said
pour
that
l'utiliser
now in
sur
Tunisia
le
they are trying
terrain.
to use the building wastes
Il y
in
avait au
building new roads,
Tunis
which
qui
is a way
utilise
to make the infrastructure
le
recycle
reste
and reuse waste to
de
reach this
matière
goal
à la fin
of
de
green infrastructure
building
and
pour
green transport
reconstruire les
sector.
routes.
There are some other approaches.
Il y a
like,
aussi
for example, in some European countries,
il y a
that are
aussi des
using some
process
instruments. Like in the Dutch government,
que
they
certains
are using
pays
what they call
européens
the Dubocalc, which is
utilisent,
a
par exemple
software that
le
they
Hollande
use
qui
to
utilise
calculate the impact of the infrastructure or the environment.
utilise
And it allows
une
the
application
procuring
pour
entities
calculer
to reward the
pour
bidders who offer
calculer les
better solutions.
standards
There
pour
is also
servir,
another
pour
instrument called
conserver,
the CO2 ladder calculator
conserver
that
la
also
pollution.
allows to really calculate
Elles ont
the
un autre app
contribution of the
pour
inputs in
calculer
terms of
l'émission de
CO2
carbone.
emissions and to
Si
encourage solutions that
vous
emit less
contribuez
CO2. So all these instruments and approaches can be used in
à
several
tout ce
sectors,
à toute cette
including
matière
the transport sector,
et tout
to
ce
make it
processus
more sustainable,
qui peut
more
être
green,
utilisé dans
and to
différents
emit
secteurs
less CO2,
pour être
so that
plus
the
vital et
objective
plus
of
vert
maybe net zero can be reached in the sector.
et qui peut diminuer
Thank you,
l'utilisation
Mr. Hibi. I think
d'émissions
your point
de
regarding the
carbone
cost
et qui
when
va
it comes
arriver
to
à
green
la fois
procurement,
à
we do see
zéro
sometimes some
émission
pushback
de
from
carbone. C'est
few
l'objectif.
countries on how to procure while
Il y a
we
plusieurs
have to pay
instants
higher costs.
résistants
But at the
au
same
pays.
time, we should be
Dans
able
certains
also
pays, il
to
va y
see
avoir
that
l'achat.
this life cycle cost or on the
Il faut
long term,
que cette vie du
the
produit
impact that would do on
pour
the
être sur
environment,
le
that
long
would be very
terme,
important in terms of mindset and
pour garder
in
notre,
terms of moving towards
notre
this
climat
greener
et
procurement.
pour changer la mentalité
The scenario you have
sur
outlined
notre achat
necessitate, of course, a
quotidien.
concerted and
Le
substantial
scénario que vous avez
commitment
proposé,
from all stakeholders involved, encompassing
Et
governmental bodies, employers,
c'est-
contractors,
c'est-
suppliers, and
c'est-
various other
c'est concerne tous les
contributors in the
participants.
process. So while it
Dans
is
toute
evident that some governments are
dans la-
actively
dans
pursuing
cette
policy
opération.
and regulatory reforms to enhance environmental sustainability, the pivotal question raises
Certains
itself.
pays
How can the private
prennent
sector be effectively mobilized?
l'initiative
So given that any
là-dessus.
business
Mais la question
endeavors
ici,
relies
comment
on
le
financial
secteur
support,
privé
commercial
pour nous
banks
aider
can emerge as a pivotal
à faire
getaway
face
for engaging the private sector in this journey
qui peut
towards
faire-
sustainability. So I'll turn to you, Mr. Ramos. You have worked closely with
comment
public
peut
administration and with
être
governmental
à
bodies.
servir
What do you think?
pour garder
This
notre
transition to net zero will
météo
require
et notre climat
transformational change
vert.
across many sectors and will require action from businesses of all sizes. So we do agree that there is no one size fits all approach
Nous
to
sommes
net zero,
d'accord.
and different businesses
Il y a
in
raison.
different industries will face distinct challenges, but also
Et
they
qu'il
have
y a
opportunities.
certains travaux qui
Everyone must
vont
play a role
avoir des
to
défis.
reach
ils ont
and
la
achieve
chance.
sustainability. And
Chaque
the
cas
commercial banks
doit prendre
play
son
a
rôle.
vital role, critical through their
Et le
customers
commerce
by
qui prend un
encouraging
rôle
the
très
private
important.
sector involvement. How is HSBC supporting the journey towards
pour
net
encourager
zero
le
in the
secteur
transport
privé.
sector? How do you actively engage and
Est-
incentivize
La banque
businesses to invest
HSBC,
in and adopt
comment
sustainable transport practices
elle peut
in the MENA
garder
region
cet
specifically?
investissement et comment elle peut
Thank you
garder
for that, and thank you
le
for
climat
having me here. It's an honor
dans
to
le
be
zone
here with
vital,
such
le zone
a
vert.
strong panel and colleagues.
Merci les invitants, merci à tous.
I guess that the role of the
Merci
financial
pour
sector is more of an
l'organisation.
enabler, right? So we were talking before about the need for policies, the need for green procurement policies, for green transportation.
Nous avons
investment.
parlé
At the
sur
end, all
des
of that will
bases
need financing, will need
et
more
certaines
funds that go into
politiques
those more sustainable
par
activities that
rapport
additional
aux
costs
façons
that countries are
d'achat.
not willing to put in the table upfront, so potentially
Il y a
it could
des
be an option
effets
to be financed through our activities. But let me just take
supplémentaires
one step
qu'il
back, if you
faut
allow me, because
que
I
les
think it's
pays
important
le
to
supporter.
highlight a little bit what is the importance of the sector
Pour
from
le
our
rendre
perspective
dans
and
les
the
zones
importance of
dans
it
les
for
zones vertes.
us as a financial institution. So we do, we have a kind of a survey that we call Transition Pathways that
pour
we've
une
been doing
société
at a global level
de
in different
commerce,
sectors that is
nous
helping us understand
avons
what is
fait
the need
ça
for our clients in
plusieurs
different sectors
secteurs.
that we provide financing to
On a
decarbonize. So
compris
on
les
transport,
besoins
we did
dans le
a
commerce,
survey
dans
with 300 transport and
les
logistic
besoins
companies across
de
16
nos
different
customers.
markets. And the survey
On a fait
result
des
came that
sondages.
88% of these transport companies are saying that net zero is
88%
fundamental or very
de ces
important
gens
for their operations and their business growth. So that highlights a little bit the
disent
importance already. But not only that, 9 out of
qu'arriver
10
à
companies in the air and
zéro
maritime
d'émissions de
space
carbone
sector
est
that
très
net zero is
important
one of the 3 priorities for them in the upcoming years,
pour
compared
continuer
to
la
3
vie.
to 4 in the road
Et les autres
and
ont
rail
dit
logistics. I guess the pressure is
que c'est
more
assez
on the air
important,
and
mais
maritime because of the higher emissions normally. In
je
terms of capex
pense
spending, we were also asking. A quarter of the companies that we surveyed, they're still saying that they will spend less than 5%
que
capex in
25%
the
de
net zero,
sociétés
which is something that I guess it needs to change.
vont dépenser
But we can see as
5%
well the models that
justement
the bigger companies are
sur
planning to
le
invest
problème
more.
de
As it would
réchauffement
be logical, but
climatique.
the numbers say that 26% of the large
Mais les
businesses, they are actually
les
planning to
sociétés
spend
plus
more
grandes
than
essaient
25% of their capex in net
d'investir
zero, while the small companies
avec
is
un
around 12%
pourcentage
of
bien
them.
plus important,
For reference, these, what
25%
we call large companies, those
d'argent
companies that have a
capitalisé
revenue above
de ces
$3.5
grandes
billion per year, and
sociétés
the SMEs is between 500
qui vont arriver à
to 10 billion per year.
250
So what
milliards
are
de
the
dollars
challenges that these
chaque
companies are
année.
facing that hopefully we will be able to support them, but obviously there is a high cost, higher
Quels
cost,
sont
looking for
les
sustainable
défis,
solutions.
les défis qui
They
vont
are saying as well that
affronter ce
they
pays-là?
struggle to find financing,
Bien sûr,
which is
c'est
interesting because obviously there is a lot of banks out there that
le
they are
prêt
having
très haut de
sustainable finance targets. So
cette
I think
opération
there is potentially a gap between
va
the need for
être
financing and the actual
envers.
financing happening. We keep hearing
Il
in
y
a
a
lot
un
of these
grand écart
similar events
entre
that
le problème
the
et
money is out there. It's just probably not there for the right projects.
le
Or
vrai
the
besoin
projects maybe they are not matching the
dans la
right
vie.
capital. So I think there is an opportunity in there.
Je
Coming back
pense
to
que
your question,
les
why do we
opportunités
care about this in
vont.
HSBC? We have committed to be a net zero
Pourquoi
bank by 2050 across our whole portfolio of finance activities.
on est sur ce
and
plan-là?
2030 in our
Pourquoi c'est
operations.
assez important pour
Obviously,
nous?
we cannot do that without
On ne peut pas,
engaging with our clients, engaging with those sectors that we are
pas
supporting.
partager avec nos
We have set
clients,
already targets for
et les
for
inciter
some
à
of the
mettre
kind of related
les
to transportation
objectifs
sector. For aviation, we have already a target for
qui
decarbonization.
concernent
It's publicly available. You can see the progress year on year in the HSBC website. And we are working on
le
creating as well
transport
targets for
aérien.
decarbonization for shipping. So those are going to come, and then we're going to need to engage with those
Et nous
clients in our
travaillons
portfolio
maintenant
to
pour
ask them,
mettre
how are you
des
going to
objectifs, même
decarbonize
dans
your
le
portfolio
secteur
so I can meet my own,
marine.
net zero
On essaie
targets
de
by
faire partager
2050.
tout le monde.
How can we help in there? Obviously, financing,
Comment
CapEx. We
on
can
va
provide
faciliter
financing. We can provide
les questions de
new
finance?
innovative products to support that
finance.
decarbonization. And we
Comment
can
on
also
va
provide
financer
advisory services,
ce
but
grand
not
projet?
from a kind of consultancy
Est-ce
perspective,
qu'on
but
peut donner
to help
des
our clients
services
understand what
de
type of financing
conseil
is the most appropriate
et aider nos
for every project
clients
that they might have. One example,
à
specifically
faire
in the MENA region that you were asking,
le
and
nécessaire
I'm
pour
speaking
être
a lot, but
dans
coming
le
down
zone
to
verte.
I was trying to set a little bit the thing.
Qu'est-ce
One
qu'on va
example
faire?
is we supported Etihad Airways. They raised $1.2 billion as the first sustainability-linked ESG loan in global aviation that happened here in the region.
Division nous avons donné
They have targets. Being an ESG loan is not only
milliard
about
et
about
400
environment.
millions de dollars
They have targets as
là
well for CO2
de
emissions,
sociétés
increased
pour
corporate
des
governance, and as well
objectifs
increase the
population
participation of women in
et arriver à zéro
senior levels of
émission de
organization.
carbone.
And the way we encourage those is through sustainability-linked finance structures.
Nous avons encouragé
When our clients, when they achieve
donc,
those targets,
nous
that we
avons
have agreed
encouragé la
on with them,
continuité
and if they don't agree, that they don't achieve those targets, then we will penalize them. So
pour
for this
tenir
specific case, being
les
$1.2
objectifs.
billion loan,
On a
the
boni
penalties could
tout
go
ce
up to
qu'ils n'ont
$5.5
pas
million, which is a substantial
tenir compte de ce
amount, I think.
problème-là.
So at the end, we encouraged indirectly to make sure that they achieve
On
those
a
targets.
fait de on a fait de donations
This is
de
one of the
5
examples. We can go into
à
more
10
examples
milliards de dollars
later on if you want.
Yes, we're
comme
coming
des
back to more
amendes.
examples.
C'est
Later on.
l'effet
Thank you so much. I think this
qui
is
va rendre
important,
les sociétés
from
plus
the
sérieuses
commercial
avec
bank
les questions
side,
de
to
population.
play a very vital role with the private sector and engaging
Sous
the private sector in
pouvez-vous,
this transformation and change.
avec
And
les
it's
banques de
also it is
commerce,
important, and
pour
hopefully
changer
our
le
commercial
secteur
banks,
privé,
also will be doing the same role in the region.
est très
And
important.
with this, I will pass on the
Yes.
floor to Mr. Eli Hello. I would like to explore with you the challenges from another lens. So, The need for
La velours
supportive
défi.
government policies and
D'un autre
regulations
côté,
to improve
le besoin
existing transportation infrastructure
de prendre des
and
décisions
incentivize new eco-friendly
pour
transportation initiatives. The importance of innovation and technologies in developing
dans le secteur de
eco-friendly
transport
transportation solution, of course, that must
et
be
le
tailored
rôle
for different national
de
circumstances
technologie
and
et les
contexts.
solutions
Also the need of financial resources
dans
and
les
investment
différents
opportunities,
environnements. On
both
voit
from the
laisser
public and the private
les
sectors.
chances
All are essential for
pour
implementing
financer
large-scale sustainable transportation
tous
projects.
ces
And
initiales
equally important, the
pour
public awareness and
être
support for sustainable
pour
transportation
encourager la
initiatives.
continuité.
What challenges do rapidly growing cities in the MENA
Quels sont
region
les
face
défis
in terms of transportation and
dans les pays qui
urbanization?
sont
What are the challenges
en
that
cours
the
de
transport
développement,
sector in the Middle East
en
and
voie
North
de
Africa
développement?
in implementing green sustainable transport solution?
Quels
And
sont
how
les
to
défis qui
navigate
vont,
the economic, security
rencontrer
and political
ce pays
challenges that creates
qui
obstacles in the
sont
shift
pour
to
écoler
sustainable
et comment
transport,
comment
but
on peut
also where
dépasser
we see the
les questions de
opportunities to
sécurité
advance in a greener
et
transport
arriver à une
sector and more
économie
energy efficiency to support more
continue
sustainable transportation.
dans le
First, I would like to thank you for this excellent topic,
Merci.
excellent session here today. The green
Merci pour ce
wave,
sujet très important.
riding the green wave. Well, we were hoping as transport engineers to keep riding this green wave after the COVID-19 had
Nous sommes comme des
Because
ingénieurs
during that period of time, we can notice throughout the whole
dans ce
globe,
temps-là.
the footprint had shrunk because transportation had stopped, literally had stopped. Now, it's not healthy to stop the transportation movement, but that gives you an idea that if we can reduce, we can shrink. However, we came out of the COVID-19 with everything that we learned through the COVID-19, from telecommuting to digitizing to door dashing, as simple as door dashing has boomed during that period. We came out from the COVID-19 as if we had
On
done
a
nothing.
sorti,
We came back to our
on n'a pas
old
compris.
previous habits, jumping into our cars,
Nous devions
and not
revenir.
trying to clinch a bit, at least, of what we saw as opportunities. In the MENA region, if we
On n'a
look
pas
back at
compris
the
les
real
chances
problem, the source of the problem, in my opinion, is that the
On va
abundance
arriver à
of fuel
retrouver
and
la
gasoline
source de
available in the MENA
l'énergie,
region
la source de problème,
and subsidizing it to the communities
la
is basically
diminution
the number one issue. Number
des
two issue,
sources
owning a car. The cost of owning a car, not buying.
et le
Owning a
problème
car
d'avoir une
is very
voiture
inexpensive.
et le prix
It's very
de
cheap.
l'avoir.
Basically, you can just buy
Ce
the
n'est
car, pay
pas
the taxes, and then that's about it.
ce n'est pas très cher.
So where I'm going with this,
On
I'm not
peut
saying
juste
that we
rouler
have
en
to deprive
voiture
people from their cars,
et
but can
aller.
give people
On
incentives
veut
to buy
pas,
green
je ne
cars
veux pas priver
versus
le monde
buying
d'acheter des
fossil
voitures.
fuel cars. We
J'incite
see
tout le monde
governments in certain
à acheter
places,
des
they do
voitures
give
bleu
financial
vital,
assistance
bleu
to their
vert.
employees to drive to work.
Il y a
every day.
il y a
Maybe because there is no
certains
infrastructure.
pays
Fair
qui
well.
donnent
So we're not
à
going to
ses
say that
salariés
all of a sudden we have
un somme
created an
d'argent
infrastructure
pour
for public
supporter
works.
l'achat des
But
voitures,
with a small
ça,
action
voitures
from
électroniques,
governments. Governments are the largest employers
avec
around
un
the world.
petit,
They are the employers
un
of all the
petit
civil
rôle de
servants,
gouvernement.
employers of the police, security forces,
Ils ont
and
tous les,
everyone
tous les,
in
tous les
or
salariés
these employees do have cars.
pour l'exécuter.
So instead of giving an assistance to the employee to
Au lieu
drive
de
a fossil
donner
fuel car,
le support
maybe double it and encourage him as an
d'acheter
incentive to buy a green car if there is no other
l'essence,
infrastructure
ils
available.
vont
And we
plutôt
know in the MENA region sometimes the environment is
supporter
harsh.
les gens
It does not
à
work to
acheter
have
les
many
voitures
bicycles for walking every day. But we can do
saines.
this shift by creating the incentive. And governments can start with their own. Maybe they can help in subsidizing like they do with housing.
On peut
They do
diminuer
offer low cost interest
comme,
rate
comme
for
dans
housing.
les questions
Why
de
not do it
logement.
for green cars?
On
we
peut
do the private market,
encourager les
banking,
gens à
we just
diminuer
heard they
leurs
have a lot of
taxes
money,
sur le logement.
right? Maybe the
Si
government
par
can put up
exemple il
a
achète
bit
une
on the
voiture
interest and make this
électronique,
change, asking these countries where they do not have really infrastructure yet, and we know infrastructure costs a lot of
on
money.
peut demander
It's
tout
not
ce
that simple.
pays.
It doesn't come overnight. And especially you did focus on the security issues sometimes
qui
and
prennent
politics.
plus de
Well,
temps.
then
On ne
the
parle pas
government can
d'un
just make
jour au
few
lendemain.
changes in their policies and regulation, and then let the
On peut
community
faire
decide and give them the
certains
incentives
changements.
to go in that route. When we go today to buy
Nous
a battery,
avons
you have the
à
option of
donner
buying a regular
des
battery
motivations aux
versus a
gens
rechargeable battery. But the rechargeable battery is more costly.
pour
Then you
recycler
always try to go back
les
to the cheap one.
batteries,
Let's try to inverse that.
mais qui coûtent
Let's
à
see
la
how we
fin
can
plus
make
cher.
the green product, whether a car or non-car, more affordable
On
to
va
the,
laisser
to the
le
community.
produit vert que
I'll
vous le
stop at this.
transférez
Thank you.
dans
I
le
will turn
comité.
on to Mr. Marcos.
On va
Mr.
revenir.
Marcos, how does IFC
C'est
see the
Monsieur
transport
Marcos.
sector from the perspective of mobilizing resources and raising capital to facilitate the sustainability initiatives?
On va
and
parler
help
comment
emerging
le
markets green
secteur
their
de
transport
transport
sector.
pour
Could you
aider
share some
le
insights
marché
on
en
how
cours de
IFC is
développement
supporting this process?
à
And
faire
what are the
son pas dans
strategies
ce
and
domaine-là
mechanisms that IFC
et
is
apprendre
employing
toutes ces
in its
stratégies.
endeavor to bolster and endorse this transformative process?
Of course, Jocelyn, and again,
Pour
thank you very much as well
voir
for
se
inviting me
porter
to this panel on this very important topic.
the
way I see IFC's role,
vers l'énergie durable.
the way I typically summarize it, it's putting theory into practice. We ultimately are an institution that provides private
de
financing
la
to
vision
projects that we believe are bankable.
nous
And it is
donner
important for us to ensure that they are bankable because
une dette
our capital is
spécialisée.
scarce and we have to ensure there's an efficient allocation of resources.
Il faut
We work across the globe
qu'on
institutionally,
vérifie tous les sources.
and we have to be very selective about the
Et
types
par
of projects that we
et on
finance to ensure that our
va
capital
avoir
is
le monde
recycled
entier.
and is housed in
Il
projects
faut
that make
qu'on
sense.
vérifie les
So where does this
le
leave IFC?
capital
So obviously the
soit
climate agenda is
recyclable,
relevant to everyone.
ça-
IFC is part of the World Bank Group, and all of our projects have to be
et la
Paris-aligned.
Banque centrale
It also means that we are consistent
internationale
with NDCs,
participe dans
and in
plusieurs
that
projets.
context, we
Là-dessus.
embed all of
Il
these
faut que
practices in the projects that we finance. And just to give you some figures, so last year, IFC provided $17 billion worth of commitments, out of which $8 billion was in infrastructure. Within that $8 billion, roughly 1.2, 1.5 billion is dedicated to infrastructure. That's across the globe. And in infrastructure, we really invest across the value chain. So that's airports, that's ports, shipping, logistics, and so on and so forth. But every single one of these projects has to be Paris-aligned. But Paris-aligned means it is taken in the context of that country. So for example, if you look at the state of Jordan, or Egypt, or Morocco,
Il
these
faut
might be at different
comprendre,
stages in terms of their
il
sustainable
faut
infrastructure. And we take
tenir
that
compte
into
de
account
différentes
when we provide financing in a transport
usages
sector.
de pays. Par exemple, le Jordan,
and
c'est pas comme l'Égypte.
How do we do this? So the World Bank obviously came up with its climate change action
Chacun
plan.
a son propre
And within that,
environnement
we
et
put
son
together what we
propre
call country climate development
problème.
reports. And that's an essential piece because it brings together the
Nous
private
avons
sector, it brings
maintenant le
together
rapport
governments
au
to
climat.
find objectives that fulfill these criteria. And you've heard
Tout
different
ce
points
que
of view.
le gouvernement veut faire avec le secteur privé,
You've heard the points of views of commercial
avec
banks, but you've also
tous
heard
les
points of views
principaux
on the technical
objectifs
aspects, procurement and
à
engineering.
obtenir
So
les
bringing all
objectifs.
of these together
Il
is
faut
essential
tenir
for
compte
us.
de toutes les stratégies
And
et
in
toutes les
terms of the
études
CCDRs, the climate change development
scientifiques.
reports, 25 have been written so far.
Et
And over the next 4 to
nous
5 years, the
avons
World Bank is
mis
going to be
25
implementing a lot more.
25
So,
standards.
In
Et le
terms
Banque
of how can the
centrale
IFC
va
support this,
appliquer
these initiatives, so we can
plus
provide
va
advisory
avoir
services and we can provide financing. So on the advisory services
tout ce que le
front, we
Banque
work with
centrale peut
governments
donner.
to find
Il peut
the right
donner un peu de
policies
somme
to
d'argent
ensure that you have
pour
bankable
travailler
projects.
avec le
I'll come back to the word
gouvernement,
bankable because it is
présenter un
essential for our
projet
financiers. So I'm very close to David in terms
bancaire
of how do we make
financer
projects bankable. They really
tout ce
have to be
genre de
bankable for us
projet.
to work on them.
Il
But on the
faut-
financing front, we also have two types of pillars, so to speak. One is pre-investment stage,
Nous
where
avons
we
deux
try to
côtés sur le
find
voie des finances.
projects
Avant
that maybe are
l'investissement,
not quite
Dans
there
la
yet in
première
terms of
phase,
bankability. So maybe we discuss certain issues
on
that will
va
enable
choisir des
government
projets qui
to make a project more
vont aider
bankable.
les
So that's what we call
gouvernements.
pre-investment phase. And what we do in these early stage projects is we invest a little bit of capital in return for either an equity stake or a debt stake later on in case there is project financing, corporate
Dans
financing.
le projet, en
And on the
contrepartie
investments
doit
front, we are obviously
en
very
partie de
much
ce
equipped to do so. So we
investissement.
provide loans, we provide equity, provide derivative
On va
products,
donner des
but
dettes,
also a term
on
that's
peut
been used a
donner
lot since we
des
started
matières,
this MENA Climate Week is blended
des
finance.
matières.
Now, blended finance is scarce. Not everybody has access to blended finance, but we
on va
try to
donner
mobilize it where we can,
une somme
where we
d'argent
think that it is relevant.
mixée pour
So that's
encourager
in terms of a summary
ce
of
genre
what
de
we can do
projet.
generally. And we work, like I said earlier, we work,
C'est le
work
résumé
across
de tout ce
the
qu'on peut
verticals
faire.
in the transport
Nous,
sector. So
on
ports,
travaille
railways,
sur
airports,
tous
logistics,
les...
shipping, and so on and so forth.
On travaille sur la route, dans les airports, dans les grands
Yes,
bâtiments.
I believe IFC, the private sector arm of the World Bank, we do
Tout
work
ce
hand
qu'on
in hand,
peut,
and now all our
tout ce
projects
qu'il
must
peut être
be
fait.
Paris aligned. So hopefully we can do some impact.
Tous nos
And
projets
now that the annual
vont
meetings
être
are happening in parallel in
pour
Marrakech,
marcher
also
avec
this
le
topic is on
contrat
the top of the agenda
qu'on a fait,
of
le
the
contrat de
annual meetings.
Paris.
Mr. Douibi, I will turn back to
Ici,
you.
la principale part.
Sustainable procurement, it often involves different types of
On va
risks
revenir sur la
compared
question
to
de l'achat.
traditional procurement. And so what strategies and tools
avoir
does the procurement sector use
plein de
to assess
dangerosité.
and manage those risks associated
Quel est
with
le problème
eco-friendly
de
transportation
secteur
procurement, such
privé
as
pour
supply
faire
chain
face à
disruptions
ce genre
or
de
regulatory
dangerosité?
changes? So how do you see procurement professionals
La
address
question de l'offre
this
et la demande.
supply chain vulnerabilities
Comment vous
and
traitez,
disruptions related to the sustainable
vous
transportation
affrontez ce
material
genre
and
de problème?
technologies, and what are the strategies that could be in place?
Okay, thank you, Jocelyn. This is a very actually
Merci.
important aspect of how to green the transport sector through public procurement. As you said it at the beginning, yes.
Comment vous avez
Greening
évoqué
the
au
transport
départ,
sector or infrastructure in general or large projects, it's still something that needs to be
le secteur de transport
promoted
en vert,
because
c'est quelque chose
I
qui
mean, the
mérite
way
d'être
procurement is
supporté.
being done maybe or has been
Et comment et les
is being
manières
done
de le faire.
actually in most of our countries is a very traditional way.
En fait,
This
dans nos
green
pays,
dimension, this sustainability dimension
ça se
is
fait
really
de
new.
manière
The main
ordinaire.
risk is
Alors,
how to buy
le grand
or
risque,
how to buy this concept to the procurement
et
professionals
comment
and
on
to the
achète,
policy
comment on
makers
vend
first, because
toutes
it
ces
needs
conceptions
strong commitment from the governments,
politiques,
from the policy makers to
parce que ça,
cascade it
ça
through the
doit
different
être,
projects and
ça
consider it in
doit être
budgeting
tenu
the
compte
different sectors,
au niveau
including
politique.
the transport sector. So it needs
Et
first
dans le secteur
awareness
du
raising.
commerce, c'est
So,
très important.
And it needs
On
to
a
be tackled
besoin
from
de plus
maybe
d'informations, et
the
plus de conscience.
environmental virtues angle of this approach of greening the
Abattre les
transport
bois de
sector.
vous
This will involve
environnemental
including maybe green
et
budgeting in the finance law in the different governments. So the way
ça
this
compris
needs
des
to be,
budgets
and of course,
verts.
the risks
C'est la route
need to
qu'on
be
va
assessed in a different
prendre.
way. And now we are
Il faut
maybe,
estimer
for the
les
time being, it's
dangerosités
through the different
de manière
projects
très
or investment
sévère.
projects financed by the bank.
Et on
We are
est dans
including the
d'autres
concept
projets
of PPSD. It's the project procurement strategy for
exploités.
development.
On
And it's
essaie
the
de
best place or
il faut
piece of
qu'on
documents
ait
where
une
this
stratégie
kind of
verte.
risk assessment is being
C'est
done.
en partie
But of course, the idea
tout ce
is
de
to
tout ce
streamline
que
this
cette
approach
estimation
through, I mean, within
et
the
comment on peut passer cette
government
stratégie
systems, whether it is a bank finance project or not. So the idea is really to start carrying out this kind of feasibility study or market analysis study to make sure that procurement will help the governments reach their development objectives. To mitigate these risks, so to mitigate the risks, it's a matter of awareness raising, it's a matter of budgeting, it's a matter of streamlining the practices within the public policies. Another risk, of course, since it is not yet in maybe the traditional way of doing procurement, it's linked to the supply chain. New products are not, maybe green products are not available on the market like any other maybe common product. So the way this needs to be addressed is a different way. Actually, public procurement, you have the public purchaser sitting on one side and the supplier on the other side, almost without any continuous interaction. So now, it's time to really work hand in hand. So the public purchasers, the governments, the organizations,
avec l'acheteur et le fournisseur.
Engage their stakeholders and work with them on finding new solutions, on finding innovative ways to green
actionnaires et trouver des manières
pour rendre les achats verts. Implemented even in some of MENA countries. We are talking now about innovative procurement.
Par exemple, dans le pays du Sud d'Afrique, on parle des achats créatifs.
To allow startups to have access
des sociétés en cours de développement.
The old fashion of doing procurement is to looking for well-established companies that have experience, that have large maybe turnover, that have the capacity. And it is, of course, not opening the door for maybe newcomers or innovators to access this sector. So now, there is this trend of innovative procurement that is being, that we are starting seeing in our countries that really opens the door for this kind of innovation. So, to summarize, it's still a new concept. It's still a risky approach because of the mentality in doing public procurement, because of also the perception that public purchasers have about sustainable procurement. They think that it is more expensive than green procurement, is more expensive than traditional procurement. This is not usually the case, because
parce que les achats à faire sont plus chers que les achats durables bio. On pense
several cases, it's less expensive than a common product or
en général dans la vie de le produit.
And this, of course, requires policymakers to really come up with new policies
des politiciens et des responsables qui vont donner de nouvelles politiques, vont rendre, qui vont laisser les achats verts, rendre les achats verts, l'achat normal et l'achat appliqué dans la vie. Il faut concentrer sur les achats verts, même si les statistiques économiques évolution est difficile. Ici, on peut laisser ça sur le long terme. Une autre question. On fait apprendre comment on peut coopérer avec l'entrepreneur et le fournisseur. Comment on peut le faire, comment on peut les partager, l'aider avec vous.
priority sector, and I do think that the transport sector will be one of them.
On peut
But
étudier les
how to
priorités
engage the
dans le
supplier and
secteur.
contractors, and this is how Mr. Ramos has referred to
Comment
the engaging in terms of
Comment
clients
on
and customers from
peut
different perspectives,
partager
from
les
the
fournisseurs
commercial
ou
bank
les
and from different
entrepreneurs?
products that they are
Comment on peut
offering.
le rendre
But how
bon nous
to
comprendre
do
et
it with the
essayer de
suppliers,
voir
with
ce
the
qu'on dit.
procurement professionals from the government side, working with the contractor suppliers or the other part of the equation?
Thank you, Jocelyn. This is a kind of supply development program. So now, for example, in Scotland, they have a
C'est un
very
programme
well-established
pour développer
they call supply development program,
pour le
where the
développement.
public
À ce plan-là,
purchasers
ils ont un
have
programme
a
pour développer
continuous
le fournisseur.
communication and
Le
strong
fournisseur.
relationship with their suppliers. I mean, the
On
public
va y avoir
purchasers
des
sometimes
relations avec ces fournisseurs.
launch the procurement process without having any
Fournisseurs.
idea about whether the market will respond to its need or not.
Les achats
So
généraux.
this is absolutely no longer the way to do to buy green products. So the supplier
C'est pas le
development
cas.
can be through continuous
On peut pas laisser développer
or
le
enhanced
fournisseur.
relationship between the public purchasers and
Il
the
faut
private
continuer
sector,
les
where
deux
the public
côtés.
purchaser opens the door to the private sector to be aware
Pour
of
inciter
its real needs, where
les
the
achats à côté.
private sector can innovate,
que
can
là, il y ait
suggest.
ses
And this is,
besoins.
for example, what is being now implemented, or what the new procurement decree in Morocco
Ce qu'on peut
brought
faire
to as
maintenant.
an innovation.
Ce
Which
ce
is
qui se
opening the
passe
door to
maintenant au Maroc,
startups, to maybe
ils ont
innovative
ouvert les portes
bidders to come up
aux
with
petites
their ideas to the
entreprises
public purchaser or to the Ministry of
ouvrir
Environment or the
des
Ministry of
nouvelles
Transport to suggest a project.
trading,
So
des nouvelles
it's a matter of
offres
continuous relationship
vraiment
through, of course,
créatives.
the first enabler
Cette
is the
communication
public procurement legal
a une
framework
relation
that should open the door for
très
this kind
développée.
of continuous relationship. The second approach is
deuxième
to put
point,
really in place a strong relationship or partnership between the public and private sector
pour faire
as
un
part of the
contrat
public
très
procurement
fort pour avoir le
strategy
secteur
or vision of the country.
privé et le secteur
Technology can help.
public.
Now we know that
Et comment il peut
the
marcher
electronic government
avec
procurement is
la
really
vision
very
du
helpful
gouvernement.
in making procurement or the
L'achat
interaction between
électronique
the public and private sector
gouvernemental aide en ce moment
easier and
cette collaboration
more
avec le
fruitful.
secteur privé et le
Now we
secteur
know that
général
the artificial intelligence is also
pour
being
le rendre
really
plus utile.
deployed in public procurement.
Et
to
les
innovate. So
GPT
I think there are several ways
qui
of doing this,
vont
of
qui
engaging
vont tenir au supporter les
supplier
achats
or the private sector.
gouvernementaux.
I would say that, to summarize, that the key entry point or enabler is the public policy, where the government should open the door through the procurement or the procurement regulation or legal framework, and changing the mindset of the public procurement professionals in the way they interact with their suppliers. They should consider them as their partners, not as someone who will just come, take the contract, take their money through the contract and go. So this is key.
Thank you, Mr. Woubi. I do hope that in the MENA region we do get to a point where we will be satisfied with the intervention coming from the government in terms of regulatory framework and in terms of practices that will radically change, hopefully, in the very near future. Mr. Ramos?
So actually, no, thank you. You were going to me anyway, but I was planning to jump in.
Please, go ahead.
The conversation was just sparking some
Monsieur
thought
Ramos.
that I didn't think about it before from a public procurement perspective, but maybe it's
Le discours
some kind of sustainable
a
finance
modifié.
solution that it could be explored. So
Il y a
we've done in the past a
plusieurs
few
solutions de
let me
financement
rephrase this. In the past, we've
qu'on
supported
a
our
découvert
clients in
auparavant.
their own supply chain to kind of assess or advance in sustainability through their own suppliers. And one structure that we've used for that is sustainable supply chain finance.
La continuité.
The way it works, I'm not sure if
On a
everybody is aware, but
financé
the way it works, we
supplies
use
manager.
the underlying
On
risk rating
utilise
of our client, the main client. Let's assume we did it with Walmart. It's public, so I can
les
say
gestions
names.
d'estimation
The
de
first one. So we were
dangerosité.
using the underlying risk rating for Walmart, which obviously is a big
On
international
utilise certains
organization like
standards,
us, so then we are very
certaines
happy to work with
bases
them.
pour
But
estimer
maybe
le
it could
travail,
be that their supply chain, especially
mais
down the line,
il y aura
maybe they are
d'autres
not
chaînes,
really a client, or
chaînes
they wouldn't
de
meet the risk
demande.
and appetite criteria for HSBC to be
Et
banking with us.
pour être,
But because at the time Walmart was
pas
saying this is a key supplier for
sous
me,
les
then we
conditions,
could potentially bring those suppliers on
et
board.
quand on
And help them
peut
as
dire
well
que
advance in
ce
the sustainability.
fournisseur
And there is a financial incentive for
nous
that, because the way
aider
we would do it
à
is
tenir le
we
plat
ask Walmart to evaluate
de
their suppliers
continuité.
through one of the internationally accepted standards, CDP, whatever it
De la
is.
question
And
de
then they would
l'estimation
tell us
de standard
all of the suppliers that they have in their portfolio, which ones are more sustainable. Those
qui
that are more
disent
sustainable according to
que
their own rating
plein de
methodology, we would
fournisseurs
offer a financial
a
advantage
plus
in
de
the
continuité.
actual sustainable trade
On
financing,
va échanger
or we
avec
could
eux
also
des voies
offer
de vos
term lending to make sure that they can develop, they can implement
et d'été de l'argent sort
so they can actually become more
de
sustainable.
périodes
So this is something that maybe
plus
could be
intenses,
used. I don't know enough on
plus longues,
public procurement, if I'm honest, to see if this could be a
qui vous
structure
rendent
that could
utile.
work, but yeah, something that I was thinking
Je
of.
pense que
This is
cette
great,
idée va
actually.
être
Thank you.
utile
Mr. Hello, I
au
will
niveau
give
des
you the
achats.
floor again, and I will pick your mind a little bit from your expertise on the ground, from an engineer point of view, working on projects.
D'après votre expérience en tant qu'ingénieur,
How do you see the response from contractors, suppliers,
comment vous trouvez les réactions de la fournisseur quand vous parlez des produits vitaux ou des produits verts? Quelles sont leurs réactions? Comment elles réagissent? Est-ce que vous voyez des résistants, un peu de résistance dans tous ces projets que vous faites le sous-tracteur? Ça dépend
the procurement aspect of that project. If
ce qu'on va acheter sur ce projet, le côté des achats dans ce projet pour donner le fournisseur le droit de fournir des produits pareils. On va donner un exemple. Est-ce que ce produit va leur donner quelque chose d'avantage, une idée créative? Mais ce qui est sûr, quand on va passer vers l'énergie verte, ce qui vient sur notre tête, c'est le prix qui est vraiment très cher, qui est partagé dans plusieurs projets. Par exemple, je ne peux pas venir dire
as a public entity, you can come in right away and say, I want all my lightings to be LED. You don't give a chance for other types of product to come in. And there are many manufacturers.
Je veux voir tous les lumières LED.
You can put in a criteria there, but why bother with the criteria if you know
un bon mètre, plusieurs types. Mais si vous connaissez ce genre et c'est un bon prix sur ce produit, tu peux tout de suite annoncer que je voudrais bien avoir ça. Et pas l'autre. Tu vas mettre des... Mais quand tu dis je veux juste enseigner, tu vas trouver le moindre. Mais si tu mets la qualité vert et étudier le circuit de la produit, tu vas réussir à trouver le bon produit. Les solutions traditionnelles existent et sont affectées si vous faites des recherches. Et si vous regardez la voiture, l'exploitation minière, quand je regarde le frigo, on essaie d'économiser l'énergie. C'est pas juste une question d'argent. C'est plusieurs types pour faire les achats. On consomme, mais on regarde le produit. Et on regarde le produit qui peut diminuer l'utilisation de l'énergie. Alors, notre vision a été changée par rapport à les avant. Cette nouvelle vision, il faut qu'on soit sévère avec les qualités et il faut qu'on soit concentré sur les achats. C'est pas une étude isolée, mais c'est un feeling. Il faut avancer, même lentement, mais il faut avancer. On fait apprendre les techniciens, les experts dans le secteur de l'énergie. On a appris de nos erreurs. Et le gouvernement, il faut qu'ils fassent des études plus vastes que les achats pas très chers. Ils font mixer parmi les achats et ils vont construire sur votre vision, mais ils ne vont pas donner un achat qui ne sont pas très chers. Cette production, alors, il faut qu'on ait une vision quand on fait ces achats.
I would like to hear from you on the contract management part. You do have
sur le
green implementation. You do have the elements to implement in a greener way, but how do you monitor? How do you ensure that indeed what has been proposed and what has been innovated is actually implemented on the ground? And do you face any challenges in terms of implementation?
Monitoring is always the most difficult part. Monitoring is always the most difficult part. Even if we take the old system of monitoring social and environmental aspects, from as simple as checking the emission out of the construction vehicles or the fleet of the contractor.
Si on prend les émissions dans les projets,
I mean, they're in the business basically to pave a road. This is what they do. This is their bread and butter for every day. But so the monitoring is the aspect, and the way to do the monitoring, basically, the best way to do the monitoring is the third party. Have a third party monitoring on your project, roaming all the projects, not specific, and do these checks and balances and on-site visits and check the record keeping. Because once the supervision is on board, and he knows there is somebody who's monitoring and checking. We don't know when, but somebody will come at some point of time and
Quand
check
il y a,
our record.
il y a un
It's better to do a
contrôleur,
good job. So monitoring
comment tout le
will do the
monde
trick. From
assume
as simple as
le troisième
construction
côté
vehicles
va
that are
être
on
le
site.
rassurer.
I'm not talking about the pavers and
Même dans le moindre
these do have
chose,
their own systems of checking.
les
But the
produits qui
contractor's
sont
fleet,
sur le terrain, il faut le
taking the labels
contrôler.
every morning, bringing them back, trucks,
Et
other
les
cars,
produits
they
de
are a major producer
l'entrepreneur
of
qui va
emissions.
prendre,
If these are well kept and well
qui
monitored on
va
site,
produire
at least you can achieve that first step into
et
monitoring the site
bilan
itself.
de
And then
carbone,
you can label it if it is
on va prendre le
according to the
premier
limits you
pas
put in or not.
dans ce secteur.
Usually construction equipment on site may not be subject to the inspection
Est-ce
done
que
by
ça
the
va
government
marcher
on
avec nos
regular
standards?
basis, or maybe infrequently. So do it on site. It's a good
Ce
method
gouvernement
to
ne
have
peut
it
pas faire
part
ce,
of the tender document, part of the contract
ne peut
management.
pas faire ça.
Indeed,
Mais
indeed,
on a besoin
monitoring
d'un
is an
troisième
important
côté
part of the
pour,
process and is an
pour
informative part of
regarder
the process that will
cette
let us move
vision
forward
générale.
in this journey towards the greener future. Mr. Morris, I will come back to you. I know that IFC and the World Bank have many examples in the region where we started this initiative and journey together. Can you please provide us
On a
with
commencé ce
some
voyage
examples of
et cette
financing that IFC
initiative
was involved in
pour
within the
financer
region, to mobilize resources
la
contributing
Banque
to the transportation
internationale
sector?
Sure,
et la Banque
I will answer
centrale.
that question, but allow me also to add a little bit because there are some very interesting points that Eddie mentioned that I'd like to expand
Tu
on
me
a
permets
little
à
bit.
ajouter?
But yes, you're right. So no, I
Vous avez
mentioned
raison.
earlier that we look at all of the verticals when it comes to the transportation sector. I
On
mentioned
peut
ports, I
regarder
mentioned
tout ce
airports.
qui
So,
movise
for instance,
dans
we helped finance Queen Alia's first PPP
les
airport a few
stations
years
sur
ago.
la mer,
It was
pour
for a
les
25-year
aéroports.
concession. A
On
pretty
a
significant
dernièrement
project as well.
développé
The first
l'aéroport
PPP
de Ben
the
Ali.
transport sector in the region at that
Ce
time.
grand
Really
projet,
significant and large
c'est le
project.
premier
So
projet
we
qu'on
would
a
love
fait
to replicate
partager le
that in other
secteur
parts
privé et le
of the MENA region.
secteur public.
But more recently, and it's slightly outside of Middle East, North Africa,
Dans le
we've also
Moyen-Orient,
financed ports and
on a
airports in
financé
Turkey.
aussi
So the Fraport port
les
in
grands
2023,
aéroports
financially
en Turquie.
2023, we did $200 million debt financing. And that was, it had a number
On
of
a
climate
payé 2
mitigation
millions
targets and
ça.
goals. So we helped to green the port and also establish
Il y
practices
avait
to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And
des essais
believe it or not, even with
pour
airports, there
diminuer
are
les
pockets where you can still
émissions de
have
carbone
a positive environmental footprint.
avec
So for instance,
les
we
aéroports.
financed again in financial year
Nous
2023
avons par
the airport
exemple
of Antalya, where we helped
on a l'aéroport
the
d'Antalya.
airport to, or when the project will be completed, that is, we'll have a framework to help reduce the environmental footprint and help enhance
Le 4
energy savings by at least 24% and implement what we call a leadership in
vont
energy
diminuer
and environmental
l'année
design goal
dernière
certification. So all of these
24% de
practices, we
l'énergie.
like to implement them. But
Et tout
I'd
se
like to add a little bit
pratique
more to what Ellie's saying,
qu'on
because
le fait
monitoring is
aujourd'hui.
indeed, in my career, so I work on the investment side, so bring us to commitment.
On
But I
revient
also
sur le
work on
droit
the
de
monitoring side, and that's where you see
contrôle.
problems. And you have to solve problems. But how do you help monitoring on environmental footprint? So I'm going to link your point to what David was saying about sustainability-linked loans. And that can have an element of third-party certification. So if, for instance, you have a KPI on a sustainability-linked loan that says we're going to reduce our Scope 1, Scope 2, or Scope 3 emissions, you'll have an independent third party that will come and
Dans le
monitor.
secteur,
And there is a carrot and a stick, because if you've met that target, then obviously there's a reduction in your margin, but if you haven't, there is a corresponding impact, which is an increase in your margin. So that is a way, I think,
mais
to help bridge
s'il
the
n'y a
gap on
pas,
the monitoring front, but also to incentivize private sector and financiers to really promote this agenda.
il faut
of
communiquer
sustainable
avec
finance. I have many more
télévision.
examples, Justin, but we're coming already
Il y a
to just
beaucoup de
15 minutes
cautions
after quite a few
et beaucoup d'exemples,
minutes of speaking, so I'll leave it there.
mais je
for
pense
the next
que
points.
Thank you.
Il n'y a pas beaucoup de temps pour discuter tous que j'ai. Et maintenant, on est en train d'entrer le Coupe du Monde 28. On a appris pendant les dernières années dans votre secteur qu'il faut foncer de bord. Et comment vous pensez qu'il faut faire au COP 28?
Thank you.
On commençait avec M.
For us,
Ramos.
it's a little bit of what I mentioned earlier. It's about the transition. I mentioned the example of
Et
Etihad
comment
Airways. We have other
le
examples
point
where
de
we are supporting
transfert,
other levels. For instance, we supported Qatar
on a
Pacific,
bien
not the
vu
region, but we supported Qatar Pacific in creating their own
beaucoup
sustainable aviation fuel
d'exemples
program. So their
et
clients
beaucoup
can
de
come on board and then they can somehow obtain certified
clients
not credits, but
locaux
certificates saying that their goods
qui sont prêts de finance
with sustainable aviation fuel, and at a much smaller scale.
et
we
aussi
supported
il y
in
a
Egypt here in the region. A company is called Shift EV.
de finance en Égypte
What they do is basically electrofit.
et comment ils font faire
So they basically take all trucks, all logistic fleets, and they retrofit them into electric vehicles, battery-operated electric vehicles.
et comment ils ont transféré au pays d'Europe.
Initially for the client, they rely on the funding
Et
that we
ça,
provided them, and then they do the investment in that retrofitting.
et comment faire pour les financements que nous allons à et nous allons prendre un petit peu de bénéfices.
COP27 in Egypt, COP28 here in the region, I think is just bringing the focus to the importance of this region and how it
Et
has
COP 28 et COP 27, il faut trouver plusieurs moyens. Et c'est un grand challengement.
Those sectors into the conversation. So I think it's important that is shining
Mais il
light
faut
on the
qu'on
importance of the region
prenne beaucoup le secteur
energy decarbonization journey that the world has to go through.
dans la région.
Without this region being supportive of it. So I would assume it's more of
Il ne
this
peut
kind
pas
of,
le faire avec tout le monde ensemble.
how to say, but maybe like the point of inflection where things are really scaling up in the region, and sustainability takes another dimension, and then after COP we see an exponential growth on activity.
Et je pense que quelques personnes vont activer et plus de participer au futur. Et je voulais bien voir plus d'exemples de gouvernement et on voulait bien faire ce qu'on dit, même les grandes compagnies ou bien le gouvernement, qu'ils sont suit le plan pour tous les plans et partager tous les idées. On a déjà commencé avec nous et j'espère que partagez tous avec vous aussi. Mais les questions, qu'est-ce qu'on a besoin? Mais je voulais parler calmement et j'espère que le ministère de mettre le bon prix pour la qualité entre le prix et le prix de dépend et comment mettre prix pour les personnes et pour les publics. Je pense que ça, il va mettre un peu de balance entre nous, mais je ne sais pas qu'on peut le faire ou bien est-ce qu'on peut le voir.
In terms of governments having much more achievable targets that would enable the private sector
Et
to get
comme on
involved and in
dit,
turn, IFC to provide finance.
quelques gouvernements, ils ont déjà des plans.
Let me maybe borrow a statement that, or use a statement that yesterday was used by one of
Je vais
our
dire un
speakers,
exemple
who is really a guru in terms of sustainable procurement.
que hier, quelqu'un collègue
So he said,
a
"We
dit
no
hier,
longer have time, we have
hier,
no time,
hier,
more time to
Monsieur
discuss,
FRE
it's time to
dit,
act." I think the way
il n'y a pas de
actually,
temps pour réfléchir,
sustainable or green procurement is
mais
being
c'est le
presented
temps
as an option.
pour prendre action.
Okay, we encourage you to maybe to include more green or
On
sustainable
peut dire
procurement
beaucoup de
practices
choses
in your purchasing policies
pour
and
le
budget, and he
gouvernement
has
et
to
pour les
take the
planètes
place to do that. I think
et pour l'énergie
I believe that
verte,
COP28 is the right place
mais
to
je crois que
set
COP28, c'est le bon place pour mettre le point pour réduire le carbone, pour mettre le minimum niveau de carbone dans la région.
Have maybe a roadmap or agree on a roadmap on how to put together the policymakers,
avoir
the
un
legislators,
plan
and the private sector,
pour nous, pour
sector
marchands,
together to work hand in hand in order to reach this
et travailler ensemble
of reducing emissions,
pour
among others in
aller au même
public
point
procurement sector through
ensemble.
green procurement or maybe more ambitious sustainable procurement.
Thank you. I will challenge you with one last question. What do you think in one term?
Et je voulais dire, question pour vous. Est-ce que vous pouvez dire un mot pour le succès de ce plan? Pour le transfert le transfert vert, c'est quoi le mot?
That's two words.
It's a hyphenated word.
C'est le mot, c'est partagé. Le public aide.
Courage.
Moi, je dis le pouvoir.
Well, thank you so much.
Et moi aussi, je vous remercie, merci pour discuter avec vous et différentes opinions. Et on va prendre le point avec nous. Et comme ça, je vais fermer ce discuter. Et merci. Et merci, monsieur, pour le Skype aussi. Merci à vous. Merci.